Good morning, everyone. Members of the media, some of whom are on with us now, and others who are planning to watch us a little later today due to other conflicts. I am Carl Rosen. I'm the General President of UE, and we're glad to have you here with us. We have several guests who will be speaking that I will introduce as we go along that we're very happy to have here. Also, our plan is there's 5 of us who will be making remarks. We'll hold them to about 3 minutes each, and then we should have about 15 minutes for questions is what we're figuring, get it done in a half hour. I'll just give a little background here at the beginning. We are here because UE represents, through its local 506, 1,400 members in Erie, Pennsylvania, who build locomotives for the Wabtec Corporation. And they're embarking now on a historic struggle to try to bring accountability to a corporation that has willfully and repeatedly violated the terms of the collective bargaining agreement that it had signed with its own workers in 2019. That collective bargaining agreement does not contain the right to strike over grievances. This is a right that UE Local 506 had for 8 decades when General Electric operated the plant. Wabtec came in 4 years ago, negotiated a new contract, did not want to work under those same terms. The workers agreed to give them a chance to do it under the method they wanted, with a grievance and arbitration system that did not include a right to strike over grievances. And instead, Wabtec during this period has felt free to violate the terms of that agreement again and again, because there has not been an effective method for accountability to hold them to what they had committed to on paper. It's not just the union saying this. A recent academic study by the Project for Middle Class Renewal at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, confirms what we have been hearing from our members for the last 4 years. This report found, among other things, that since Local 506 has been operating without the right to strike over grievances, that the number of grievances per capita, per person working in the plant, has doubled, and that instead of the grievances getting resolved, the grievance process has actually resulted in ongoing friction. So after the speakers, we will distribute a link to the report and also contact information for its authors for anyone who wishes to follow up. You're going to hear now from 2 leaders from Local 506, as well as Reverend Richard Freeman from the Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network, and Sara Nelson, President of the Association of Flight Attendants, and one of the foremost proponents of the importance of workers' right to strike in the U.S. So let's get going first with Scott Slauson, the President of UE Local 506.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Carl, and thank you for everybody that's attending. You know, for us, this is about, it's fundamentally about accountability. 4 years ago, we were bought out by Wabtec and negotiated a pretty tumultuous agreement at that time. But as we came to resolution with them, they asked us to put a little trust in them, claiming they were a different company, a company that wanted to resolve issues quickly and fairly with their employees. And we put a little faith in them and agreed to limit our ability to strike over grievances. Over the last 4 years, the company has repeatedly abused that trust and have proven they don't want to be held accountable for anything regarding their employees. The company has shown no respect to the workforce. The CEO has continuously stated that employees are their #1 assets, but yet they continue to largely ignore the issues, as well as the continuous reinterpretation of our contract. As the report says, Wabtec is trying to turn the grievance process into a management tool rather than a method for settling disputes. We've repeatedly attempted to resolve issues through the grievance process, but having no way of holding the company accountable for its answers, we're forced into arbitration after arbitration. The company claims the grievance process is working. I would say it's working for them, but as the report indicates, and we have been stating, our members are becoming increasingly cynical about the company's commitment to resolving problems. This has led to significantly increased conflict between the union and the company, not less. And generally, the purpose of a collective bargaining agreement is to reduce friction, not increase it. It's a common misconception that unions want to strike. Under GE, we used the right to strike extremely sparingly. As a matter of fact, it was a total of 4 grievances totaling 13 hours from 2005 to 2019. And while we filed additional notices of potential strike action during that time frame, they forced a conversation between us and our employer where we were able to find resolve with each other. And that's why having the right to withhold your labor creates mutual respect and accountability. The plant can have a bright future. Our country needs to build green locomotives, and we're prepared to do that. We have thousands of years of experience at the Erie facility. And the EPA is moving in that direction. A recent report, which we released last month, details the thousands of jobs that can be created here in Erie, building the green locomotives that our country needs. We are the most skilled locomotive building workforce in the country. We're the oldest locomotive manufacturing facility in the country. But the problems we have is moving forward together and creating that bright future. Wabtec needs to respect our experience and expertise. And the company needs to be held accountable to the people who build its locomotives, which is why we've proposed to restore the right to strike over grievances, so that disputes can be resolved swiftly and fairly rather than taking years to resolve. And to this day, we are still waiting on answers from grievances that were filed almost 4 years ago. So thank you, Carl, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we will go to Leo Gregorewski, who is the Chief Plant Steward for UE Local 506. Leo.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm going to go over the steps of the grievance process and compare them to what we had with General Electric, and be reminded, under General Electric, we did have a strike clause. We were able to strike. As Scott pointed out, we tried this method. You know, they assured us that everything would have been okay through the grievance process and there would be resolves. And you'll hear in my report that's not the case by any means. So we have 3 steps in our grievance process. It's step 1, step 2, and step 3. An overview real quick here. Step 1, a grievance is filed on the floor between you know, the foreman and the steward. They try to resolve the grievance there. If we can't find a resolve at step 1, then it is pushed to step 2. Step 2 means a grievance comes over here to the hall. We put a docket number on it. And once a month, we meet with the company for step 2, and we argue those grievances. And that's between my divisional chief stewards, who have stewards underneath them that report to them. I have 9 divisional chief stewards, and myself. And we deal with the plant UR managers, the junior UR staff. We try to resolve those grievances at step 2. If they are not resolved at step 2, then they go to the final step of the grievance process, which is step 3. That's argued between different people now. Now it's off the floor, and it's argued between the UR manager, UR HR manager at the plant, the highest ranking person there in that position, the chief plant steward, that's me, Scott Slauson, our president is there, our business agent, John Miles, is there, and our international representative, John Thompson, is there. I'll cover the results of that in a little bit here, but the big issue with step 3 with Wabtec is the UR manager is there from Wabtec, from the Erie site. He's already made decisions at the first 2 steps of the grievance process. So it's like going in front of a judge and arguing your case 3 times in front of the same judge that has denied you twice before. It's not a winning formula. So the big differences between General Electric and Wabtec during the grievance process is under GE, in a 4-year period, because we're going to go with 4 years with Wabtec. Typically, there would be probably right around 500 grievances filed, about 125 a year, plus or minus, depending on the year. That was with GE. With Wabtec, over the past 4 years, we have filed over 1,200 grievances. 1,200 grievances. That's astronomical. The results of those grievances that have went through the grievance process under General Electric, most of the grievances were settled at step 1 or step 2. Under Wabtec, no grievances are settled at step 1, and maybe 3% are settled at step 2. So you can imagine how many grievances go to the final step 3 of the process. When we were with General Electric, step 3, between 6 and 9 cases would be argued at step 3 every 3 months. We would meet once every 3 months. Under Wabtec, we have a step 3 grievance meeting every month, and 30 to 40 grievances are argued at that meeting. And again, with the UR manager from the plant, which basically they all get rejected. 95% of the grievances that go to step 3, we have to vote to go to arbitration. That's not a winning number either. Arbitration process where we're at is expensive. It's about $9,000 a case to take to arbitration. We have filed so far about 68 arbitrations at $9,000 in arbitration. So you can see what they're doing here. We have no avenue but to take it to arbitration. Our plant manager recently cited an arbitration decision reinstating a member who was unjustly fired as an example of the winning grievance process that we have. For one thing, that member should have never been terminated anyways, but we had no recourse, and it took over a year for us to get her job back. Another example of a union steward was suspended for 1 week without pay and was accused of a work stoppage. He was not even at work on that day, but we had to, pardon?
Yeah, we'll need to move on to the other speakers soon, so.
Okay. All right, so basically the union or the grievance process they have doesn't work. The only way it does work is if we have the right to hold them accountable and have a strike clause in our contract, period. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Leo. Sorry, trying to get everybody in here timely for the press.
That's fine, Carl. That's fine. Thank you.
Next, we're very happy to have with us here Reverend Richard Freeman from he's the president, in fact, of the Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network to speak about the community's outlook on this.
Thank you so much, Carl. Many times in the history of the labor-faith interaction, it's always been transactional. We use the nomenclature rent a collar because it's transactional. This isn't. This is relational. Why? It's very simple. We as a community of faith, we are driven by the reality that every human being is engaged in this work because they are indeed human beings. And what we find atrocious in this particular situation is that our brothers and sisters at Local 506, their humanity is being violated by Wabtec. How do you say so, Freeman? I say it very simply. When a worker cannot come to work and expect to be treated honorably, that is a violation of their humanity. And as a person of faith, as people of faith in the faith communities that we represent, we find that egregious, we find that abhorrent, and we must stand with you. We stand with our brothers and sisters at Local 506 because it is an affront to our faith. It's an affront to all that we represent. There are two reasons we are here. One is the humanity of our brothers and sisters, and two, we believe fervently in protecting the sacred orb that we call Earth, the environment. The work that you're proposing to do related to green rail is consistent with our faith traditions. We multiply ourselves and represent many faiths, not just Christians, but Muslims, Jews, people across many faith traditions. Wabtec is unjust. It's unjust in its treatment of workers represented by Local 506. Every worker is a human being. Now, many times we use the word worker, and it's an honorable word. But when we use the word worker, sometimes we forget the word human being. And the fact that we are all human beings, we are endowed with our Creator with the right to be treated with dignity and respect. And part of that is to know that when I show up to work, I should be expected to be treated with honor. When I am not treated with honor, I have the right to do two things. I can protect my humanity and protest the maltreatment. And that's one of the reasons why we stand with you in declaring that you should have the right to strike. You need to have the right to withhold your labor when you are mistreated. And we stand with you fervently in that work. Secondly, when we talk about your, I think, outstanding efforts to bring green rails production to Erie County, it is a juggernaut of a economic boom to Erie County. I read your report where it talks about upwards of 4,600 direct jobs, union sustaining, family sustaining jobs to that area. I can't think of any legislator in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that would stand and shout for 4,600 new, good, quality jobs. That will protect our environment. That's a sacred work. So I tell you, we bring our hands, we bring our feet, and we bring our prayers to the work that you're doing, and hoping that we have a safe and a wonderful outcome in the work that Local 506 is doing with UE. So thank you so much for allowing us to be with you. And we're going to keep the work going, and we're going to fight like heaven to get it done.
Thank you so much, Reverend Freeman, for being with us and for sharing your support. We really appreciate it. Lastly, we're really pleased to have Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, here with us, who's been an outspoken leader throughout the country on how workers can stand up for themselves. So, Sara, take it away.
Thank you, Carl. It's been said more than once that collective bargaining and striking is a human right. And that's exactly right. The idea that you can come to work under terms that you did not agree to should have gone out with the 13th Amendment. Now, this country has never ratified the conventions of the International Labor Organization that codifies that collective bargaining and the right to strike is a human right. But we have passed laws that indicate that, and certainly we can all agree to that. I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of executives come and go. They come and go. It's the workers who stay and who are in it for the long haul with their jobs and with the community. And when we negotiate these contracts and the executives do not honor those contracts, they hold all the cards. The 4 Ds of union busting: divide, delay, distract, and demoralize. And what they are trying to do is to demoralize the community so that we don't stand up and fight for these good jobs and the promise of what is coming with building a green economy where everyone can live better lives. We talked about over 4,000 direct jobs right there in Erie. What that is going to do is create a better tax base for teachers and firefighters and all the social services that you have in the area. You're going to have people who can pay for the cable bill and employ other people, pay their rent and contribute to the community, and send their kids to soccer camp and contribute in other ways. So many non-direct jobs that are also supported by these good union jobs. And when union members do not have the right to withhold their labor, when the company doesn't follow through with their end of the bargain, think about that. When the workers show that they are willing to go out and strike, they have to agree with everyone, with all those different faith traditions that are in the workplace, with all the different backgrounds that people bring to that space. It is when people understand that there is an injustice and they stand up together that typically there is an injustice going on. What you also heard here is that when the right to strike was included in the grievance process, these issues were resolved on the shop floor, or they were resolved at that step 2, right at the company with the people who know the company, know the operation, know what works, know what was agreed to in that contract. When it goes to that final step of arbitration, you're putting it in the hands of someone who is outside of the company. Why would the company want to agree to that? The only reason they would want to go through that process is to delay those results for the workers, to demoralize those workers, and get them to not stand up for themselves. That is bad for the community. It is bad for the company. It creates poor labor relations, and it doesn't create as good a product for Wabtec to build. And that ultimately will hurt the company, hurt the community, hurt the long-term viability of all of those jobs and good union jobs that are sustaining to the community. The right to strike is a fundamental human right. The Association of Flight Attendants stands with UE. We are so glad that they are educating the community, all of the union members getting ready to fight on this issue, because this is the very fight that we have to have across the country if we are going to take on the existential threats of our time, if we are going to take on the massive inequality that is riding off the backs of humanity, the people who make up this country and make up our world, and are going to either save it or have corporations continue down this path where we steal from our land, steal from the people, and destroy the earth. So that's the big picture. That's what this is all about. And it all starts on the shop floor with that understanding by both parties that the question is going to be called with the right to strike. So let's get together, resolve the issues, have high morale on the job, create a good product, and have everyone feel tremendous pride in a job well done. Thanks so much. And Carl, thank you for the invite to take part in this.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for being here. And we will now be posting in the chat a copy of the report, which really demonstrates how restricting the right to strike over grievances did not result in issues being resolved peacefully, but instead just creating additional tension and leaving everyone very unhappy. So that's what we wanted to express, and we will now open the floor for those who would like to ask questions from the media. You can use the raise hand function if you'd like, and then you'll need to unmute yourself when I call on you, or if you have a question that you want to submit via the Q&A or the chat. Yeah, I think the chat here would be fine too. Go ahead, and we will try to address any questions that you might have. Or did everything get expressed so well that that there aren't questions at this point? Looks like there's a hand from Mark Grunberg. Go ahead.
Yeah, question. First of all, question for background. What was the sequence 4 years ago, if anybody can remember it, that led to this quote trust clause where the workers gave up the right to strike? I'm vaguely recalling that you guys were almost pushed to it because GE was threatening to close the locomotive plant, but I could be wrong. That's just a vague recall. Can somebody enlighten me, please?
I think, Scott, maybe you should take that one if you'd like. Clarify that. Yep.
So no, the GE never threatened to close the locomotive division here in Erie, Pennsylvania. GE did open another facility in Fort Worth, Texas. We both built locomotives simultaneously. When GE got into financial trouble, they ended up selling off chunks of their business, and transportation was one of those chunks. 4 years ago, Wabtec made a play for GE Transportation and bought them, doubling their size. They came in with expectations of great changes, broad sweeping changes to the contract, and we ended up going on strike at that time for 9 days. And after the a memorandum of agreement was signed with the company, we went back into contract negotiations with them. Through those contract negotiations, which took months to get completed, we kind of came to an understanding with the company, and they wanted to take a different approach to grievances. And basically they asked us then to put a little trust in them, and they would put some trust in us. We do have a strike clause in our contract today. However, it's limited to transfer of work. It's limited to how they timely responses in the grievance process and permanent subcontracting of work. They did not want any form of a strike clause in the contract. We were not going to survive the contract or agree to a contract that didn't have some form of ability to strike. But over the last 4 years, the problems have compounded. They choose not to settle grievances. And as I stated earlier in my report, in some cases right now, we're waiting almost 4 years for a resolve or an answer to a grievance that is now tied up in federal court because legal and binding has no meaning to the company.
Thank you, Scott. I'll call on Noam Schreiber next, and I'll also note that Reverend Freeman is going to have to leave at the bottom of the half hour here. So if there's any questions to be directed his way, try and get those in shortly. We'll keep moving along as the best of us, as long as there are questions. Go ahead, Noam. And you may need to unmute yourself. There you go. Nope, now you're muted again. Is that something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Now we've got you. Very good. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Thanks for hosting the call. I just wanted to check in with Sarah. Obviously, a lot of us are waiting on the decision from the Supreme Court in this Glacier Northwest case that appears that it could rein in the right to strike, not just over grievances, but generally. And wanted to ask, what how significant you fear that the ruling could be, what you fear could change, and how that might affect workers' power at the workplace.
Well, first of all, Noam, try not to fear, because if I'm wasting time fearing, then not spending time strategizing on how to make things better. But if the Supreme Court interferes with any of the already very limited right to strike in this country, it is simply going to create more instability. The right to strike enshrined in law only came out of massive strikes, massive sit-down strikes with a lot of violence and a lot of instability in the country. And that's what the Supreme Court is going to decide here. Whether or not they're going to actually respect this human right and continue to move forward with a modicum of stability in labor relations, or whether we're going to go back to a place where workers are going to have to take it in our own hands. We've seen across the country in recent years that the old adage is true, that there are no unsuccessful or there are no unlawful strikes, there are only unsuccessful ones. And so what will happen is there will simply be a breakdown of the law, which means that the workers are going to have to take it in their hands, because as we're seeing laws change to even go back to allow child labor today, we know really what's at stake. And this is, I would really caution the Supreme Court on this about how disabling their ruling could be if they interfere with that right to strike. And if they do, labor is going to have to take that into our own hands, and you will probably see a lot more strikes, a lot more instability that will come from that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll add that what's happening here at UE Local 506 is a microcosm of that, because the local had the right to strike over grievances as a way to keep pressure on the employer to get them settled for literally 80 years, and now that that's been removed, there's not a way to have kind of an equal footing, and one side is the employer is now running roughshod over the workers, and it's creating tremendous anger and instability there. It's not good for labor relations, and that's what we're courting on a federal level with the way things have been handled in the courts lately. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Sure. We have a hand raised from Feldman Strategies. If you can identify yourself a little bit more than that, that would be helpful. You need to unmute. I don't. Feldman Strategies, we're not hearing anything. Jonathan, is that something you can fix in terms of the muting? I don't know if they meant to have their hand up or not. Perhaps they didn't. Okay. Are there any other questions that anybody wants to raise at this time? We have gotten to the half-hour mark, so we won't belabor it, and anybody who asked a question could ask a new additional one. It looks like Mark Grunberg's back for a second question. Go ahead. You need to unmute yourself.
This is for Carl. It's more
Yeah.
of a congratulatory question and ask for a comment. You guys just won big up in Minnesota.
Mhm.
Talk about how that occurred. University of Minnesota. I'm doing that story too.
Well, and I'll say this also ties into what's going on here at UE Local 506, which is what you're seeing across graduate workers all across the country right now is that they're standing up and getting themselves organized, and it's the workers standing up for each other. And this is the same that we have here. This local has a proud tradition of real democracy, member involvement, and it's workers organizing workers. University of Minnesota, tremendous. I believe it was over 90% vote in favor of unionizing with UE. We're really happy to have them on board. It's a recognition of the tremendous pressures and negative impacts that have happened in higher education in recent decades, with less opportunities going forward and more difficult living circumstances, et cetera. And workers are wanting to try to level that playing field a little bit. It's a continuation of work that's happened at I think UE has organized over 20,000 graduate workers over the last year or so, and we're really happy to have the University of Minnesota join in there too.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd really like to thank Reverend Freeman before he has to leave, or maybe he did just leave, but I'm not sure there's any other questions. I'm seeing the Feldman Strategies hand, but I don't think that was intended. So if not, we should maybe close out. Those who want to join us in a webinar this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time, we will have a longer discussion at that point. You're welcome to join us again at that time.
Excuse me, sir.
Oh, yes. Oh, there you are. Yes.
My name is Rick Liebel. I'm with WJET Fox 66 in Erie.
Ah, okay, very good. So I see that you were sent the link. That's why it's got the wrong name on it. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead and ask your question.
I came in a few minutes late
Mhm.
and wanted to know if you could just briefly recap about somebody was mentioning jobs also moving here to Erie.
Well, there was a reference to a report that was released about 3 weeks ago or so about green locomotives. Perhaps somebody can put that link in the chat for this gentleman. But the idea there is that there's tremendous opportunity here for Wabtec to produce a lot of much more energy efficient, non-climate polluting locomotives. We need the railroads to also move on this. We need the federal and state governments to encourage the railroads to move on it. And we need Wabtec to make the commitment that they're going to do that production here in Erie. But if that's done, it could literally result in thousands of additional jobs both at the Erie Wabtec Works and also throughout the greater Northwest Pennsylvania and surrounding areas, and in fact generate good jobs nationwide.
Is there a
So,
possibility? I'm sorry. Is there
yeah.
a possibility that they could email me that link?
Sure. Do you want to put your email address in the chat or in some other way get that to us?
I sure will. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks. All right, good. We solved that mystery. Okay. If there's no other questions, I think we'll close out. Thank you, panelists, for your contributions, and we'll see you again this afternoon. And thank you to everybody who came to hear what was to be said, and we'll see some of you again later today. Thanks all.